What's the real message? You know, whenever I find an excellent manager, I find a great listener, somebody that's able to use their ears and really tune in. Now how can we become, as managers, better listeners? Dr. Lyman Stile, one of the world's experts in the area of listening, said that listening depends upon our willingness and our ability. Now, as managers, obviously the willingness is the motivational factor. Do we want to hear? We need to be tuned in and realize how important it is for us in our roles as managers to be good listeners. Ability, however, is something that we can improve. There are 6 ways that we can improve our listening ability. First way, take the listening responsibility. Take the listening responsibility of the communication process. Normally, I guess, we think in terms of the person speaking as being the person responsible for the communication. But you go ahead as a listener, particularly as a manager, and key into what they're saying. Stop them if necessary. Ask further questions to make sure that that communication process is complete. Number 2, look for the value moments in listening. I'm always amazed when I'm with an audience that every once in a while somebody is going down and writing something. What are they writing down? A value moment in listening for them. The next time you're in a listening environment, think, what can I find that will be of value to me in terms of what is being said that I can key in on? The third suggestion, take notes. It's amazing how much more you can remember when you do take notes. And you know, even if you never review your notes, although I suggest that you do, even if you never review your notes, psychologists tell us that the act of writing itself will help us remember. The fourth suggestion may be the most powerful one. Plan to report what you're listening to. Imagine for a minute if you had to make a report on what is being said now. You would be listening very, very carefully, wouldn't you? You probably would be taking notes. You would be thinking about the content in terms of how you were going to make that report. So in any listening environment as a manager, say, I'm going to have to make a report on this, and that will help motivate you to really key in. Number 5, when distractions occur in the listening process, return to the content. A good listener realizes that there are going to be distractions. There always are in a listening environment. But when that distraction occurs, and when you come off the content, return back to the content. For instance, right now, you may be saying, Jim is going a little bit slow on this point and I'm distracted. If that's the case, review the points that we've said previously, but stick with that content. The 6th and final thing that you can do to increase your listening ability is to identify and use structure. What you find when most people talk is that they'll use a standard way of presenting ideas. It may be enumerating them. They may make lists. They may make points. Or they may paint a picture. A lot of people talk in terms of painting the picture. If you can key into how that other person is presenting, it will make all the difference in the world. Some people use cause and effect as an example. They'll say, here's the problem, here's the cause, here's the effect. Try to key into the structure that the other individual is using. You know, the good Lord gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. As a manager, if we want to be effective, we should use them in the same proportion. I challenge you to key in on listening skills. But you know, there's another way that we can listen. In addition to using our ears, we can use our eyes, because body language becomes an extremely important way to understand what the other person is thinking and feeling. And you know, the interesting thing is you read body language a lot better than you think you do. As you look at this picture, how is this particular discussion going? How about the people on the right side of the page? I mean, man, you recognize it right away. They are confident. They feel good, don't they? We see it in all the body language signs. And the interesting thing is we're not even seeing them moving, just their very positions there. And a lot of body language, of course, is the movement of it. And then, of course, you look on the left-hand side, the people on the left-hand side of that table, they've got problems, don't they? There's no question about that. And you pick it up quickly. You see how much you already know about body language? It is important. Albert Morabian did a study a while back, and he found that there were 3 things that determined face-to-face communication. There were, first of all, the words that were chosen. Secondly, there was how those words were said, the verbal quality of things, the pauses, the tones, the inflections. And there's a big difference between 1 and 2 there. Let me give you an example. I might say, I didn't say Butch stole the money. Now, I could say that a lot of different ways. I didn't say Butch stole the money. I didn't say Butch stole the money. I didn't say Butch stole the money. 4 different ways, 4 completely different meanings on the basis of the way the exact same words were said. We as managers really need to think about how we're communicating on the basis of what we're saying. The third way that we communicate in face-to-face communications is with body language. Now, if you had to put percentages on each of these, and that's what his study attempted to find out, what part of the face-to-face communication was communicated by each of these things, I wonder what you'd put there. Interestingly enough, we find that 7% is due to the words that were chosen. 38% due to how those words were said. And 55% was due to what an individual was doing with their body as they said it. Let's see if we can't take a couple examples of body language and figure out ways that we can better understand what's happening. I love to use an example in a large group, and I won't do it here, but let me tell you what I do. I normally call on a gentleman from the back row, and I have him come up, and I have him stand right in the middle, and I step off to the side, and I say, now we're going to use this gentleman as an example of body language. All eyes are on this poor individual up here, and I ask you, how is he standing? Is he not standing in the typical fig leaf position? Now, why is he standing that way? There are probably 2 reasons. First of all, when I called him up, as he walked up, he thought, is there any chance that possibly? That's not the body language reason. The body language reason is psychologists tell us when we feel uncomfortable, we tend to stand in that fig leaf position. Watch what happens with just a minor change in this position from hands in the front to hands behind. Do you remember your high school principal? Your commanding officer? Oh, what a change has come over my demeanor just on the basis of hands in front or hands behind. You know, there are really 2 reasons why we study body language. One, of course, is to understand, and probably the most important is to understand how the other person is thinking and how they are feeling. That's so important, and you can tell it by their body position. But the second reason is also important. We as managers need to think about this. There is a direct effect on the body position we take and how we feel. In other words, if you take a confident body position, you tend to feel confident. If you take a non-confident body position, you tend to feel non-confident. Let's take a look then at some confident positions. Now, we've already talked about one being the hands behind the back. That's a confident position. How about this one? How about hands behind the head? Can't you see two attorneys leaning back in their chairs? That's power. That's confidence. That's another body position that expresses confidence. Here's another one. Did you ever see someone straddle a chair? Now that's a confident position, isn't it? Straddling a chair. Or how about this one? Here's a very subtle position that we call steepling. And the larger, the higher that steeple gets, the more confidence is there. I hate to be on the other side of the table negotiating, for instance, with somebody who's steepling. What are they saying? I know something you don't know. You know, tremendous amount of confidence there. There's another one, and that's the possession gesture. You can just see somebody with their arm around somebody. That's any possession gesture, or perhaps hand on the table, or foot up on a chair, or on a car. Any possession gesture is a gesture of confidence. Another confidence display is what we call the thumbs display, another confidence gesture. You can just imagine the individual standing with his hands in his side pockets with the thumbs displayed, or perhaps out of the rear pockets with the thumbs sticking out, the thumbs display, a real show of confidence. There's one final show of confidence, particularly in most Western cultures, although this does vary somewhat from culture to culture, and it's eye contact. You can demonstrate confidence by maintaining eye contact. Now, just as we have confidence gestures, we should pay some attention to some of the non-confidence gestures. We already demonstrated one, that of course being the fig leaf position. There are some others, however. Have you ever noticed an individual talking where more often than not they tend to bring their hand up to their nose or mouth? Now, what kind of a feeling do you get when I do this? There's certainly a lack of confidence somewhere. Sometimes an audience will say they might be lying. That's interesting. Interrogators know, people who are trained to interrogate, know it is virtually impossible for an individual who normally tells the truth to tell a lie without his hand coming up to his mouth. Think about what a young child does when they tell a lie. Well, we as adults don't get that obvious with it, but it is probably a carryover from that. Another one would be the lack of eye contact. You can tell a person is feeling uncomfortable. Again, in most cultures, and this varies depending upon the culture, if they do not maintain eye contact. There's one other that relates to the eye, and that's the eye blink rate. I had an experience with this clearing customs in a foreign country one time. I was bringing in some samples, went through customs, had already declared on the customs form what I was bringing in, but I was with someone from the company that I was working with there, and they said, "Jim, I don't think you can bring those in. Let me handle it through the next checkpoint." So I just remained quiet, and they did the talking there. Immediately, they pulled us out of line and asked us in regard to these things. The individual was shading the truth some, and you know what happened to the eye blink rate? It increased. You see, when people are uptight, whatever their normal eye blink rate is, it will tend to increase. You can learn a lot from studying body language. Let's take an example, for instance, of the palms. Now, you've noticed that occasionally I'm gesturing with the open palm. The open palm in any gesture means certain things. It means openness, it means warmth, it means friendliness, it means honesty, it means submission. It means all of those things. So any gesture with the open palm indicates that. But occasionally, you see me gesturing up here with the closed palm or the closed fist or turning it this way or making a point, and this is power, and this is force, and this is control. That even carries over to the handshake situation. Did you ever wonder why people shake hands differently? Dan, did you ever shake hands with an individual who wanted to be in control? What happened in this situation? Do you see what happened? Came over the top. Now, most of us learn to shake hands pretty much straight up and down. But if somebody wants to be in control, you see how that puts me in the power position, which automatically put Dan in the submissive position. The power of understanding body language. Let's look at a couple other body language situations. For instance, the scratching of the head. What does that mean when an individual scratches their head? Probably means they're not understanding, doesn't it? They're thinking, they're contemplating. It can help us understand what they're thinking. Or how about the hand to the back of the neck? You know, you see that often, someone with her hand to the back of the neck. There's problems. There's trouble there, isn't it? We think in terms of a pain in the neck and they're rubbing it. Yeah. Or how about the finger under the collar? Now this could be a man or a woman, but anybody that's got a tight-fitting collar, you see them going under like this. What's happening under there? They're trying to let off some steam, aren't they? Yeah. They're uptight for some reason. Now, you need to take and figure out in the context of that discussion what's causing them to feel uptight. But it certainly tips you off to the fact that they're feeling uptight. There's another factor with the eyes, one that is totally beyond our control, and that's the pupil dilation, where they get larger. You know, that automatically happens when we feel good, when we're happy. And the reverse is also true. Our pupil will tend to constrict or get smaller. So if you're close enough to an individual and they are angry and they are upset, that pupil will automatically come down, and there's no way that we can control that. It's probably one of the reasons that in a card-playing situation or in a gambling situation, people wear what? Colored glasses, you see, that cover that up, because when they get dealt that perfect hand, even though they get the poker face or the bland face, they can't hide it from their eyes. How about the head tilt? Have you ever wondered why people tilt their head where they're listening to you? Or have you ever had an animal do that? A bird or a dog, where you talk to them and they tilt their head? What are they doing? They're very interested. They're listening. People do exactly the same thing. It's a sure sign of interest. How about the lint picker? Have you ever had someone in your office who was sitting there picking up imaginary pieces of lint and releasing them? Oh, you've got a problem, don't you? What are they saying? They're saying, I'm bored. I'm not interested any longer, and it is a sure sign that that is the case. How about this example? Now, before we talk about this one, I want to insert a thought here. Anything that we say about body language needs to be read in context. This, for example, in any given room at any given time, probably 10 to 15% of the people are going to be sitting this way because it's comfortable. If it was cold in the room, maybe more people would, because it kind of keeps us warm if we're doing that. But I want to tell you, as a speaker, I know that if at the end of my presentation 90% of the people are sitting this way, I've probably got a problem, don't I? Because this is the typical defensive position. As a manager, in the many situations that you find yourself in, think about what you can do. For instance, you may be going in and talking to a couple of people and they find themselves sitting in this position. What does that tell you about what they may be thinking, and what would you like to do? Wouldn't you like to get them out of that particular position? Because, you know, interestingly enough, what did we say at the beginning? The longer we sit in any given position, more we tend to feel like that position demonstrates. And I'm sure if I had you all sit here like this for a long time, you would begin to feel defensive. So you try to get them out of that particular position. How about mirroring? There is an excellent technique that you can use as a manager. All that means is reflecting the body language that you see coming back from the other individual. Just reflecting back to them whatever you see from them. It will tend to put you on the same wavelength and is an excellent technique to put you in touch with that individual. How about the use of body position from a power standpoint? Now, obviously, my standing here and talking to you, I am in the power position. I am looking down. If I want you to feel comfortable, particularly talking to you individually, I might simply come down to this position. And obviously, when I bring myself down even a little lower, boy, it sure makes you feel comfortable, and the situation is much more relaxed, is it not? How about in your office as you're dealing with people? We have an office environment here. I wonder, Butch, if we could use you for this example. Let's assume this is my office, and let's position you in the chair that I've positioned here in the office, and me back here in this chair. Now, this, of course, is about the most formal environment that I could get. Butch, way back away from the thing. I truly have the power here. I've got my high-backed chair. I'm behind the table or the desk. I can make it a little bit more comfortable by positioning that chair close. Butch, will you move that chair up close to the table? Now, this is a little bit more friendly environment here. Again, I can just adjust my elevation for Butch to have him feel more and more comfortable as I come down lower. I can make him even feel more comfortable. I could position that chair, and let's move it right around to the side here, Butch. If I positioned that chair in this position, all of a sudden we've got a situation where Butch and I are about on the same keel here. We've eliminated this big, powerful desk which maintains my authority and reduced it. There's one thing that I could do that would probably even be more friendly than that if I wanted to. And Butch, let's take that chair and put it right back over there. And I could simply move out here, get another chair, and we could discuss things out here. And wouldn't that be the most comfortable environment? So based on what you want to accomplish, whether you want to be exhibiting your position of power and authority and control, or whether you want the other individual to feel comfortable, you can adjust the environment to accomplish that. Thank you, Butch, for your help in that example. Now let's turn our office into another environment where you're operating as a manager. Let's assume that rather than being a desk, this is a table, and you're coming for an important negotiation with an individual who has already taken his position here at the table. Now, fortunately for you, there are 3 other chairs around the table. One in position A over here, one in position B here, and one in position C over here. Now, you wanting to be effective in this particular discussion, this particular negotiation, automatically gravitate to chair. No. Well, that's interesting. I'm hearing A, B, and C, and you know what? You're all right. Because each of you were envisioning a different type of discussion here. If you wanted a power position, if it was a typical adversarial situation and you had power or wanted it, you probably wanted to say in position C. So some of you were saying that. Others of you said, no, I want the friendly environment. I'm going to eliminate the table. I'm going to take chair A over there, and that would accomplish that thing. Some of you said B. B is a good choice too. B is, of course, the power position at the table, isn't it? Being the end of the table. It also gives you flexibility of moving one way and not having a table, or moving the other way and having a table. You see, you can structure what you want to structure on the basis of your positioning. Just one other thing let's discuss before we leave this important area of body language, and that's what you wear. Do you think that there was a reason today that I wore the dark blue suit that I'm wearing? Yes, dark blue for both men and for women projects power. Now, you don't always want to project power, but when you do, dark blue is an excellent color to wear with contrasting accessories. The more you can provide contrasting accessories, the more power you'll present. But sometimes as a manager, you don't want to project power. You would rather project warmth and friendliness. What colors would do that? Well, could you imagine me in a beige or a khaki suit here? Warm, friendly, earth tones, and the accessories blending in and not providing a lot of contrast? That would project warmth and friendliness. If you want to be a better manager, I challenge you to listen both with your ears and with your eyes, and you can tune in to the real message.